Welcome back to the Liquid Late Nights podcast. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. The sun is shining, birds are singing. We're going to drop you some knowledge. You're going to have a good time. That's CD. I'm Mr. A. I don't even got jokes today. I mean, I know there was some sort of speech last night. We're moving on.
Yeah, not me.
No,
I'll
no.
pass on that.
It's still Black History Month, so we're going to give you another segment because y'all said y'all wanted more. So we're going to talk about we're going to give you a little Florida centrics.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Seminoles and not Florida State, my friends.
Well, yeah. Okay, so
Although they do
yeah,
get a piece of money off of that.
they do, but here's the deal. Okay, so I was partially educated in the state of Florida. I say partially because maybe they told you something about the Seminoles and what happened here. I didn't hear anything about anything. I looked for no. Did you? Later on, you're younger. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
so
no, I honestly, for Florida, they didn't. I think I learned more about tribes when I lived in North Carolina, the ones that were there, than I ever did when
the,
I came down to
the
Florida.
creeks and stuff like, but they
Hmm.
came down from into Florida from there. So what I'm saying is like the only thing they told us about Florida was I heard the story about Ponce de León looking for the fountain of youth in the 15th century, and it's all that's bunch of crap, dude. I can't say that. Okay. Anyway, so
Spanish conquistadors. Maybe you learned about some pirates. You know, Cubans came over later. That's about it.
again, Florida history was spotty. All you got was like the Spanish. They didn't even teach you how Florida got because I didn't realize at the time that Florida was Spain, which I did know in a sense, but just through osmosis. But in the history books, it was all sideways. Okay, let's be clear about that. Okay, never mind. So just forget that. Okay, so anyway, during the time of what am I? Where am I here? I can't profess my the total historians. So right about the time when the U.S. or what it wasn't the U.S. at the time was just trying to form itself, right before the revolution, before the founding of uh, the war with the English for independence, right? And I heard a guy today say, "Well, I don't even touch that. I don't do it." All of a sudden, my TikTok, not my TikTok, my Instagram, just be throwing me all kind of wild stuff, dude. Are they tracking me and stuff? They do say these guys for the war to be free against the English, and they was holding some other people in bondage. How you figure that? Anyway, it was funny. But we're going to talk about the Seminole Wars. Most people, I don't know if you can find it, but there was a time like when Spain was still a major power before they started getting their butt kicked and stuff. But in Spanish Florida, they call it New Spain, right? New Spain, basically California, different places like that. So, and what was happening was Spain had abolished slavery. So a lot of enslaved, African people would get away and sneak stuff from the Carolinas and Georgia, Alabama, down into Florida and live down here with the people. And then there was also native people living here too. Like there was a Creek, Muskogee, and some other people who eventually all became known as the Seminole, but there was a conglomeration of different people, right? And that was a problem for your Uncle Sam, and the owners on the plantation owners because when the word got out that if you could escape Florida to Florida, you can be free. Now, here's another thing I say about this: the story was always told about the Underground Railroad through the Quakers and stuff making it to Canada. People were coming to Florida before that. Florida was a bastion for freedom. People come to Florida. In fact, they either go to Florida, go to the Bahamas, they go to Mexico. This was happening in 1810s or something like that. But all you get is like some guy, some Quaker hiding them out and snipping them up in Toronto and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
This is, excuse me, but that's the only little history stuff you got, right? Correct?
Right,
Am I
right.
wrong?
Yeah, that's right,
Because
right.
I don't remember anything. This stuff, when I started coming across all this stuff later, I said, really? Anyway, as far back as 1689, there were escaped African people living in Florida, in Spanish Florida. So that means generations later was not slave, but they were descendants from enslaved people who had escaped to Florida was still living here. Okay. Now there's documentation that U.S. said we got a Florida problem because Spain was still owned it, and the planters in South Carolina, Georgia, want to try to do something about it because there are people running away and slipping down into Florida. It's actually closer to get to Florida than it is to go to Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a series of wars, which again, we learn about a lot of different battles, and the TV in the movies always show you the Plains Indian Wars with the Apaches and the Chiricahuas, and you know what I mean? They always show you those wars were basically in the 1870s, 1880s, right?
Out west,
The
how the
West
West
War.
was won, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is Buffalo Bakers. But yeah, I heard a guy once say the reason those movies were so popular to make them because during that time you didn't want to make movies about back east because it was so bad back east. It was squalor and the factories started. It was the rough living in New England in those days, 1880s, 1890s. No, so it's more flashy to have Alan Ladd and all these little short guys who were playing cowboys to win the West. Anyway, but the wars that was the Seminoles, which were in there, and the black people over a 50-year period, they fought three major engagements in Florida from like 1817 to about 1858. They called them the First Seminole War, 1817, 1818, a couple of years there. Then the Second Seminole War was from 1835 to 1842, was like 7 years of just fighting, because they were trying to get the people back, the resistance. And I think the reason, well, I don't think nothing, but it's like you only hear about it because this was not like this was fighting. You couldn't come down here. And the Third Seminole War was 1855 to 1858. That's a couple of years before the Civil War started. Now, the guy that had the most to deal with this was Andrew Jackson. Made his claim to fame before he became president. He can fight Indians. He did what Custer tried to do later on, but before he got whacked at the little bighorn. But so they were here. He brought troops in. But what I'm trying to say, there was so much fighting here in Florida that I can't believe I went to school here. Ain't nobody that didn't come up. They didn't come up any place. No, you.
No, I don't think there was ever because I feel like at some point, probably like middle school, is when you should get like that. You're going to give you your state history course or class for a year or whatever it is. I don't remember seeing that at all. I don't remember hearing all that.
No, so because after Spain got in several fights with the U.S. and they started getting their butt kicked, they ceded Florida to the United States somewhere around 1820, somewhere between 1820 and 1825. So it made it worse for people living out here now because now you had your uncle bringing troops because Spain was starting to their empire was crumbling. Which didn't last that long, but they were powerful for a while. But yeah, they lasted about. Spain came into. Okay, the oldest European established city in the United States is in St. Augustine, Florida, which was established by the Spanish in 1565. So by what? About 1825, what is it? Almost 300 years later, 270, 200, my math is bad, but yeah, just under 300 years later. So the Spain was
yeah, it was gone. Yeah. It was gone. Well, the British had already taken the world over by that point, so
yeah,
it was just the remnants.
So then they set up now to come into Florida and either move these people because what's this guy name? And again, Andrew Jackson, once he became president, instituted the Indian Removal Act in 1830. So they want all native people, even the ones who had given to them, bought into the creeks and all the ones bought into stuff. So they were going to be like the five civilized tribes, they used to call them themselves anyway. And they're going to move anybody that was a Native American west of the Mississippi into what it was back those days they called Indian Territory, which is what today is Oklahoma. And the Seminoles said, nah, we've been moving a lot. We ain't moving. So they dug in. Hence the second Seminole Wars. So a lot of people died. It's a lot of just it's some serious history, dude. And then when I found it, because sometimes you mess around with chat and stuff, they said, well, since you're in Tampa, let me tell you something. Tampa, which was back in those days, was Fort Brooks. The old Fort Brooks is right down here, of course, where the hockey bar is right now, where Hat Tricks is. It still got a room at Fort Brooks where the trolley goes. Was a main staging area for the interior because they could bring the ships into Tampa Bay and go in and fight those guys. So Fort Brooks, which is Tampa, was the main area for the subject trying to what they call it, pacify these people. And then great leaders like, well, you guys live in Orlando, Osceola. Osceola was a you wouldn't call him a chief or anything, but he was a great leader uh, of the Seminoles in Florida, and the guy was a statesman. He was excellent. He was a mixed guy. He was a mix. He was Scottish and Creek, and they were something else, dude. This whole history is like I just find it amazing to take a little look. So Florida was exciting. It's more exciting than on the plains someplace fighting somebody in the desert in Arizona. This stuff was like there was a guy named a black guy named John Horse. He was a linguist, spoke several different languages. This guy was one of the most feared, respected leaders here, and he did all kinds. Listen. He fought here against the U.S. He fought with the U.S. Eventually, he took all his people and left Florida and went to Mexico. He became a leader in Mexico. This is how this goes. But this is some good stuff. So this is the history of the people. And we've been, if you just want to talk about last 200-300 years doing this kind of stuff, and I just find it exciting.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be look for the resource. I was thinking about this. Like I read "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee" in college for one of my classes. We went through that, but I'm almost positive that's all talking about heading west. All the Trail of Tears, heading to Oklahoma, heading to the western. I don't think they talked about Spanish Florida or
where they came from in the Good West. Yeah. Not just the Creeks and the ones who were living, but so a lot of people died doing that thing. It just, but not everybody left. There's Seminoles in Florida now who still here. And they say we were undefeated. They said they never surrendered. Now a lot of them, but they're still down there in Okeechobee and the swamp down in the Everglades and stuff. It is just, I just find it fascinating, and I also find it perplexing because what's the best word? We get homogenized history.
Mm-hmm.
I still think if your average American person will get some better view of how all this stuff went down, they have a better understanding of what it's like to be here. You know what I mean? It's just anyway. There's a
everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story, and not everybody knows everybody else's story. That's
no, because they won't tell it. I was reading about they were saying like so when the second war was when the British fought in the war 1812, and the British was when they burned down the White House, and then they were leaving, so they decided they built a fort called Fort Prosper, which is I don't want to get this wrong. It's someplace on the Gulf side, maybe somewhere near Pensacola, and there was then the black was freedmen or not freedmen who escaped people, free black, free Barren, they occupied this fort. They called it, and it's called Fort Prosper. The name they called it was back in those days was Negro Fort because it was about 1814. It was full of like free black people, and they were living there. This is like 1814. That's 50 years before the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. Living there, thriving before the U.S. came in and did them in, but that's all another stuff. But they were there doing stuff. That kind of history is like I found being a person that was born in Florida, parents who was born in Alabama, Georgia, Carolina, I got relatives. I have blood, I have history in this soil, and the ancestors are here. I know we have ancestors that from across the water, but we don't have a lot of connection. But 300-400 years, these people have been here. They was here resisting, living their lives, or trying to raise their family, raise their children, because they did it because some of us are still here. They succeeded at it. Anyway, when you look though, what you get from it? Tell me what you think.
I was just surprised by just how, like, it's almost like a footnote in comparison to what I've seen. Like, that was a little more. That wasn't a lot, but it was definitely more than I'd seen, because I swear I've only seen, they'll hit it real quick in relation to Andrew Jackson, kind of, but they're not going to go into details. And definitely Florida just did not have that kind of component. I don't know if that history, they just
The
didn't want to talk
resistance,
about it.
the
It was just so
greatest
weird.
victories against of slave rebellions happened here in Florida
Well, we're definitely
during
not
that
going to
time.
hear that.
It happened here in Florida.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to hear that. But just in general, I just don't. And maybe it was Central Florida. Maybe other parts of Florida got a little bit
Central
better,
Florida, okay, it was Central Florida.
a better like history block of it to tell at least that
No,
part of
they
the
just
thing.
didn't give it.
They just didn't
Again,
give a
all he told you was Ponce de León. Because again, Tampa, the Tampa Bay area was like, okay, so this is a staging area because you can get the ships and come in here and launch into the interior. But you go interior to like Polk County, which is not Polk County, and Osceola County, stuff like that there, and you go south and Google the Okeechobee War and how bad the U.S. military got beat by the Seminoles and the Black Seminoles on that time. This is like stuff. I mean, I just find it exciting, and you can make some good movies out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of seeing like John Wayne playing a Apache. You know what I mean?
Did he only do that one time though?
Yeah, but Paul Newman playing Apache. Who else would I see playing Native American guys?
Oh,
Chuck Connors.
William Shatner.
Dude, you got to be kidding me. It's all about the patch, but that's the West
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But
Yeah.
oh, here in this area is more complicated because there were people who were the Creeks, Meshoggah, several other groups. They made deals. They had been living here, and they were calling the five civilized tribes. They was trying to be European, but in the end, they got that's what the Trail of Tears was. These people. They offered to buy the land from them. They said, I don't want to buy it. They said, well, we're just going to take it. You got to go. And Andrew Jackson was a ruthless guy, dude. That's why
Mm-hmm.
they said most Native American people would not use the $20 bill because Andrew Jackson's face is on it.
Damn.
Not that I know anything about. Well, yeah, true story.
I mean,
Yeah, wow.
makes
Anyway,
sense to me. It makes
I
sense
just
to me.
thought that for people, you can kind of look this kind of stuff from 1817 to 1858. It's what's that? That's 50, almost 50 years, 40 some years.
Mhm.
There was war fought. Now, to the U.S. government, there was three different wars. 1, 2, 3, Seminole Wars. To the people who live here, the war never stopped. They was resisting, trying to raise their families, eat. Because what Andrew Jackson did a lot of times, he'd come in, he found where they lived, he burned their crops and stuff like that. You know what I mean? There were some victories, like what do you call it, the Dade Massacre. They got Dade County.
Mhm.
The story called the Dade Massacre because they lost the battle. So anytime you lose a battle, it's a massacre. When you win, it's a victory. But you get your butt kicked. It's like Custer being a massacre. He lost. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Anyway, I don't want to just beat this subject in the ground, but I just find
Someone
it
come
fascinating. Huh?
check it out. People just go check
And
it out.
here's the thing about this too. Also, there were black people on all sides of these skirmishes. There was some with the British, there was some with the U.S., there was some with the people in the swamps of resistance. Because you live here, your circumstance calls what you have to do. If you could be a spy or a scout or whatever group you with, that's what you do. You know, I read an article one time just to skip for a second. Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, his brother, his best business partner, they were rich, was a black man. So when the Civil War started, his brother was in business with a black man in the South End, and it was talking about complicated situation. But we get some kind of a static stuff. We don't know how complicated stuff are. And Jeff Davis was again the president of the Confederacy. Anyway, what do I know? Again, it's just Black History Month. But my idea is trying to get something totally different because every year I'm not no disrespect to the people they show us, but I just think it's a lot more to it. Yeah, that's what I got. I don't know if you got a question for me. I can answer that. I'll try. But there's You got. I was shocked. You guys got Osceola County. Did anybody know who Osceola was? This guy was something else.
I feel like Florida and Florida man is complicated. Like you're gonna talk
Now you
smack,
guys,
but but they're still gonna throw this out, man. Come on, we
you guys,
we got some counties named after like just super rich, Orange Grove owners from back in the day. You got this county, this guy who's this leader was resisting. It's just that's what
no,
we
I
do
get
out
it.
here.
Because
That's what we do.
Dade County is from because Dade got it. They got their butt kicked down there
Mhm.
in the wars.
But
So
but Flagler County is Henry Flagler, who built the railroad, who ran down through the east coast of Florida,
because
and
he wanted somebody to hang out in the wintertime
yeah,
he's from Chicago or New York.
I think it was New York.
Yeah, because you couldn't get other than that because baseball you couldn't stop anywhere else in Florida, so they did the railroad all the way down. I read that story a few years back about that, what this guy did. And then they go to Florida on a train and hang out
Mm.
because other than that, before air conditioning, you couldn't survive anyplace else. But
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. But that's the thing. But you don't know it all, and you gotta really dig deep to. You gotta dig deeper because they're not gonna give it to you
so yeah, but what I'm saying, but
or name
the
it.
people who responsible for developing curriculum for students, so they decide that something's not worth to present to the people,
Hmm?
right?
Uh-huh. That would be the Florida legislature.
Okay, but that's well, yes, no more DEI, huh?
Well, that's currently. Before is still.
No, it's the same. No, what
It's
you
the
mean?
same. It's the same day.
Exactly. I'm just having fun here. The flight for guys in Jupiter, Florida, right now, who some of the richest areas down in Florida, right? The Seminoles controlled Jupiter for a long time before they went down and went because they was on the coastal. These leave their families there when they go fight there. Jupiter, look it up for guys Seminoles, the town of Jupiter, Florida. That's what it was. Where is this? No, true story.
True story.
Tiger Woods lives in Jupiter right now.
Yes, he does.
Well, Jupiter, the Seminoles controlled it 100, 200 years ago, 150 years ago. So,
Now they just got a giant
but
place in
they built a
Hollywood.
fort. They built a fort. They put Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale was to do that to go in and then wipe them out. Because Florida, how many forts did Florida have? The city, everything you says a fort, it's a fort.
Yeah.
Tampa was Fort Brooks, Fort Myers, Fort Lauderdale. There's forts all over the place. Fort Prosper.
Probably Jacksonville if I already had one. Anywhere on the coast that they could get to because it was all the interior because you
Yeah.
couldn't get into the interior that well. That's why
Yeah.
that's why at least I know this part. That's why the state capital is in Tallahassee because at
Yeah.
the time the two biggest cities were Pensacola
Yeah.
and Jacksonville, and to keep them two cities from fighting, they stuck it in the middle. Of course, all the as the centuries went by, all the development and stuff went south. So now you're like, why is everybody? Why we?
And Tallahassee is a country town, dude. That's not what Tallahassee. And this is Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah, they're right there. It makes a lot of sense. I'm like, what are we doing? But
No,
that's
because
that's Florida.
all the fighting, all the fighting went up. What the Tallahatchie River is? The one.
Does it come through?
That's where all the
No,
people
no,
live, and that's where a lot of the fighting back in those days was up in that area up there. There was two Floridas at that time. It was a West, what they got the West Florida, East Florida, because before it became part of the Union, because the U.S. already had Florida, it was never part of the 13th original colony. It was not. Anyway,
There's just land.
well,
So folks,
I rambled enough.
folks, we hope you like that. And remember to like and subscribe on all your major platforms. LiquidLateNights.com is always online. YouTube.com/LiquidLateNights. And we're out. We might give you something different here in a minute. We'll see what happens.